Thank you very much. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. I've written a few books. The first one is called I Live in the Future, and Here's How It Works. The other one, which became a New York Times bestseller, is called Hatching Twitter. And it's not necessarily a book about a corporation. As Fortune said, it's more like corporate espionage than espionage in corporate history. And it was a book about the founding of Twitter and the co-founders and how they all essentially pushed each other out of the company in a fight to be in control. There was lots of drama. Essentially 4 founders that started the company, and 2 of them became billionaires. 1 of them became a millionaire, and 1 of them ended up with nothing. So it's a pretty dramatic story. I believe it's actually in Spanish too, so you can order it on the internet, on Amazon or something. I write at the New York Times a column called Disruptions. What Disruptions is it's exploring how technology is disrupting society in lots of different ways. I look at robots, I look at the way children use technology, the way the blind use technology, social media, and so on. One of the things that I'm kind of famous for is in America, we were not allowed to use technology on airplanes, and I didn't like that rule. So we started doing all this research looking at why it existed, and eventually, after about 3 years of reporting, convinced the FAA to overturn that rule so you can now use devices on airplanes. I don't know if that applies to Europe yet, but we can still work on it. I wanted to talk today about the past, present, and future. So I want to talk a little bit about the past to kind of put things into perspective. So this is a 5 megabyte hard drive from 1956. It was $3,200 a month to lease. You didn't own it, you actually paid this each month, right? So this is in 1956. In 1980, a 10 megabyte hard drive, twice the size, costs $3,398 to buy, right? So in just 20 years, the size had doubled and the price had come down quite a bit. Now, in the future, today, you have a micro hard drive, which is 128 gigabytes, which is free. And so you can see in just a short period of time how quickly this has changed. If you wanted to take the difference between these two, this hard drive on the left here is the big 5 megabyte one. It has grown 25,600 times, and the price has come down by $41 million per month. So technology, the reason I show this is because technology moves very, very quickly, and this is a perfect example of that. So I want to jump into the present a little bit. Social media, social and mobile has become literally the most important thing that we utilize every day. This is one of my favorite cartoons from the New Yorker. It says, "It keeps me from looking at my phone every 2 seconds." Mobile phones are everywhere. There are 91% of the people on Earth that have them. As the minister was saying, there are more mobile phones than there are people on the planet. Some people have 2 mobile phones. There's a prediction that by 2018, 3.5 billion people will have smartphones worldwide, because a lot of people still have flip phones. And this is a graph from Pew Research that shows how the mobile phone has become the most important technology on the planet. If you look at the graph, you can see ebooks and the way they've grown, and desktop computers, but mobile phones quickly became 91%. What are people doing on these mobile phones? They're, of course, using social media. You have 1.3 billion people on Facebook, but 1.23 million of them use their mobile phone each day to check the site. And they spend an estimated collective time of 31,000 viewers on Facebook a day, which is kind of mind-boggling. On Instagram, you have 250 million users. On Twitter, you have 300 million active users that send 500 million tweets a day. On YouTube, you have 1 billion uniquely users that come to the site every single month, and 40% of them watch on their mobile phone. So 400 million people are watching YouTube videos on their phone. You have Snapchat with 400 million snaps a day, and Tinder, which is the big dating app, where people spend 77 minutes each day on that site. To put that into perspective, 77 minutes. On Twitter, people spend about 7 minutes a day. So people are looking for significant others for an hour and a half every single day. This is a graph from a recent study from BuzzFeed where they found that their traffic is now, social has now generated more traffic than search, which is the first time you've seen this happen for media companies. And the people that are doing this, of course, are teens. In the US, for smartphones, adults spend 2.5 hours every day. Teens spend double that, with 5 hours and 12 minutes each day. And as BuzzFeed said, social is on a serious growth pain, and the millennials are the driving force behind it, which is a pretty big number. So I wanted to jump into the future a little bit. So one of the things that we hear all these words of wearable computing and sensors and robots and so on. And so I'm going to explain a little bit about what these things are and where they're going to be. One thing is flexible displays. Right now there's a lot of you that have paper in your hands, but in the future you're going to have these. These are flexible devices that are completely bendable. This is made by Samsung. It's a 5 to 55 inch screen that is completely flexible. LG is working on this technology with a fully flexible color display. One of the beauties of flexible displays is that they can be printed on a printer just like we print ink, so you don't have to have robots putting together technology with chips and so on. What you do is you have the technology that's printed and you can do it much cheaper and you can do it much quicker. At MIT, they are working on the flexible displays that are made of e-ink, and e-ink is the same thing in the Kindle. And Samsung has been working on flexible smartphones, and the idea is that these things can bend in lots of different ways, that they cannot break. There are lots of different benefits from these technologies. This is a concept for a laptop that you could imagine that, it could be used to watch a movie, you could fold it over to use as a laptop, and the keyboard would change based on what you're doing. If you were editing a movie, you would see displays along the bottom that would give you those tools. If you were writing a document, it would become all one color and you would just have text. And these are kind of the future of what we'll see with laptops. The other idea with flexible displays is that you could imagine your business card that you hand to someone, and if you get a new phone number or a new job, the business card changes automatically. So these are some really interesting things. Another thing is that we'll see an instance where wallpaper will become flexible, and so you could imagine in your home that you'll have wallpaper-like screens everywhere, so that your walls can be different things. So if you were watching a movie and you wanted to be dark, you could do that. If you wanted to show someone your photos from your vacation, you could put them up on the wall. There are lots of different ways that this can explore. But the next iteration of that is this thing called the holodeck. And this comes from those old Star Trek movies where there were the holodecks on these movies. And people are actually working on this technology today. So the way this works is you can imagine that you go into a room and everything is a screen and the room can change. And I'm going to show you this quick video of what this is what's called an omnidirectional treadmill, and it can move in any direction. So if you were in one of these rooms, you could be exploring the room and experiencing a movie or a museum. The minister was talking about tourism as being a very big part of the future for you, and you could imagine that. And this is the concept that you could imagine going into. So rather than going to a movie theater or something like that, you would have this experience of the virtual reality holodeck. The other concept that people are exploring is actually called virtual reality, and I know you all know about this. There's something in the hallway that's demonstrating this. This is called the Oculus Rift stare, where you open your mouth and go, wow. This technology has grown rapidly and very, very quickly over the last just 2 years alone. And I truly do believe that this is going to be the future of media. I think that we will go into movie theaters and we'll put these on, or we'll do it at home, and when you're in this experience and you look around, you just literally have no concept of where you are. The thing that's taking it to a whole different level is these things called exoskeletons. The way these work is that they can constrict your hands so that it feels as if you're actually holding something. So imagine you went in the virtual reality space and you grabbed this bottle, the skeleton would stop your hand so that you could actually feel like you felt something in the real world, even though it's not there. A lot of people are using this for gaming, and they're exploring how this would work for different kinds of games and so on. This will be, I think, the first iteration of this, but eventually, just like we have our moms and parents and so on that play games on their phone, this will become something that all family members will do. They use this in training in the Army right now. These Army Rangers are actually, what they see is that they're on the battlefield in Iraq, but really they're in this virtual reality room. Another thing I wanted to talk about is wearables. Wearables is another big part of the future of technology, something that we're all going to be wearing if some people are not wearing them today. There's a huge battle for this right now. There's a lot of people trying to figure out, what is the future of wearables, how it'll work, if it's going to be watches or glasses. Samsung has this device, which is a wearable computer that has a camera built in and so on. LG is trying a different approach with a round device. This is very, very hard to do from a technological standpoint, to create a round screen. And of course, there's this device, the Apple Watch, which of course will, whether it's successful or not, it will help usher wearable computing into the future. And if you think back to this piece of hardware that was this 5 megabyte hard drive, it won't be long before we're wearing something like this, which is a fully flexible round display that sits on your wrist. The US Army has been doing a lot of work with wearable computing, and they've been funding it a lot because they want to be able to see soldiers on the battlefield with this. It'll be less expensive, it'll be more durable, it won't break, and take up less power. And when you see the Army working on these things, they usually end up in consumers' hands. The reason we have GPS in our phones and our cars is because the government funded that as an exploration for the government, and then it became something for the people. There's a big concept for e-ink wearable computing, and e-ink is really great because it's low power and it's flexible. There was some news a couple of days ago that some people are actually working on this exact product. The other idea is projection displays. So you can imagine that you project a picture on your wrist that's not actually there. One concept from Philips that people have been playing with is this idea that you have a smartphone. So imagine that your phone's in your hand and then you decide you want to slap it on your wrist and it becomes a wristwatch. So it can double as two different things. And then these are some of the ideas for the Apple iWatch, which I thought were really, really great, that didn't come out yet, but I imagine that they will in the future. One of the things I say about wearables is that, in the past we would walk to our computers. In the present we carry them in our hand, like this, but in the future we'll wear them. Another idea for wearables is called glasses, which, we've seen some examples of, and I wanted to explain a little bit about how these work. This is Steve Mann. Steve Mann went to the MIT Media Lab, and he is considered the father of wearable computing. This was him about 15, 20 years ago. He looks pretty nerdy. This is the progression that Steve has gone through as what he calls himself as a cyborg. So in the 1980s, he had this big television-like thing on his face. In the 90s, he started wearing the computer around his waist, and then by the late 90s, he actually had on things called glasses. And this is Steve with his gang of wearable cyborgs. If you see them, you should run the other way. A lot of these guys ended up going to work at Google on this project, the Google Glass project. Wearable computing on your face is a really, really fascinating technology, but it's also a very scary technology because it brings up a lot of issues with privacy. So the first time I ever wore a pair of Google Glass, I put them on and I said, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. You could see text messages in your glasses, you could see the time over your eyes, you could see directions as you walk down the street. I got to experience looking for houses and seeing, as I wandered down the street, seeing the houses for sale. And the most amazing thing is you can take a picture without having to use your hands. So you can say, okay, Glass, take a picture. And for people with kids, this has been really fascinating. But then what happened was a few weeks later after I tried it for the first time, I had a scary moment. I went to a party in Silicon Valley, a dinner party, and I stood across from someone who was wearing the same things that I tried on the Google Glass, and I felt like I was standing across from someone who had a camera in my face. And then when someone else showed up with a pair of Google Glass, I felt like I was standing across from the paparazzi. What happens with this technology is you have no way to get away from it. If someone is wearing glasses and they are looking at you and they're talking to you, they're recording you, and you can't say no, there's nothing you can do. You can either be there or you can't. And I think that it's going to be a very difficult technology for people to be able to resolve as far as privacy goes. In America, you're having instances where there's there's bars and restaurants that are already banning Google Glass, and they're saying that no one can wear them that comes into the restaurant. But in the future, we may not have a choice but to not even know that people are wearing them. Eventually, your glasses will look like this, so that they will be glasses and you won't be able to tell. And in a few years, just like that hardware, that computer that became that little drive, you'll eventually have contact lenses. This is the contact lens that Google is making, and right now it can only do 1 pixel, but eventually it will be a fully functioning contact lens. I'm going to scare you a little bit now and talk about attachable computers. So attachable computers are like wearables, but they're actually on your skin and on your body. This isn't a computer that is attached to your skin that can sense all different things, that can talk to your smartphone, that can monitor your health and your heart rate and so on. This is a version of it that's on someone's skin. You can just see it above the eye over there. And what this one is doing is it's testing this woman's skin to figure out her moisture and her skin color throughout the day and how much sun she sees. And then L'Oreal, the makeup company, can recommend which moisturizer she should use on her face. This is one that's used for sports. This monitors this gentleman's heart. It monitors his output and all these different things, and can then give this accurate reading of how his sports activity went. And here's one for a baby for health, to ensure that the baby doesn't roll over, or if something's wrong, they get an alert. What's really fascinating about this is the amount of technology that's in this tiny little thing that is attached to someone's skin. You have sensors, you have temperature sensors, you have an EEG that can sense your heart rate, you have photodetectors for light, you have LEDs to be able to blink back at you, a wireless sensor, which is essentially the thing in your cell phone that gets 3G, and wireless antennas, and this is all on your skin. And there are 2 different ways that these things can get power. One is you take your phone and you tap it to it, and it passes power to it. Another way to do it is that it will actually be able to take power from the skin and from the blood flow. Are you scared yet? The other example of these sensors is things that are used for health. This is a company called Jawbone Up. They are in Silicon Valley, and this is a wrist device that monitors different things. A product that's being in production right now called Notch came out of Kickstarter, and these are tiny little sensors that cost a couple of dollars, and you can put them anywhere on your body. So if you have bad posture, you would put, one on your lower back and one on your shirt on the back, and if you stoop down, it would vibrate to remind you to sit up straight. You could imagine saying, putting them on your shoes, on your ankles, and all these different things. What these sensors do is they allow for what we call, there's a new kind of health initiative. So today we have health care, where we care for people after they get sick. In the future, we'll have health prevention. So these sensors will be able to know that we're going to get sick before we know we're going to get sick, and that they will be able to help us and avoid getting that. So if someone has a heart problem and they don't even know about it yet, rather than wait for that to happen, the sensors will be able to tell us. And there's a whole industry that's being born around this that hasn't actually come of age yet. And it's this big data world that will be able to decipher what to do with all this information. The amount of data that all of these sensors all over the world and all over our body will be able to discover is astronomical, and people are going to have to be able to decipher that. In America, we truly do believe that in universities that the next big job, it's not going to be lawyer or accountant or even engineer, it's going to be people that can decipher big amounts of data and be able to tell us what to do with them. Another scary future is biocomputing. Biocomputing is this idea that computing that is actually inside your body, not just attached to it. So we talked about these biometric sensors that can sense all these different things on you. There are people that are approaching this in different ways. The one company called Modwell is building clothes that are sensors. The entire thing is connected to your body and understands all these different things about you. The scary part about this is digital tattoos. So there are people that are coming up with these ideas where you will actually, rather than carry a cell phone or a watch, you'll have a tattoo that is actually a screen on your body. And it'll be able to be touchscreen, it'll be able to display information. There are two people working on this right now. One is based in the United States, and another is a company in Japan. And they've been working on this for 10 years, and they have these tattoos that are amazing. They call them camouflage because they can change different colors. And they're using them for certain instances to cover people's scars. For other instances, they're using them to make them interactive so that you don't have to have your cell phone with you. And in other instances, they're exploring for when you have robots, that they have this almost fake skin that looks almost real. One of the big problems with all these things is security, and this is a big challenge that people are going to have to get to as we look forward with this. Security with these kinds of technologies is very difficult. You know, it's one thing for your email to be hacked, or your smartphone. It's a whole other thing if your body gets hacked. There are companies that have been trying to figure this out. We've been dealing with hacking problems. There was just another story today in the US that Sony was hacked and all of their content was taken out. There's a belief that business is going to be, businesses will hack each other's business to try to get information on them. We have a saying, there's a woman I work with at the New York Times who is a security reporter, and she says that there are companies that have been hacked and there are other companies that don't know that have been hacked yet. In other words, everyone has dealt with this in some way, and when it comes to technologies like wearables and sensors on your arms, we're going to have to solve that problem before we get there. Developed called Proteus, and the way this one works is all it does is it senses if you take the pill, and so old people with Alzheimer's and different problems like that, the pill's wireless, it's got a little wireless receiver in it, and so you give it to an older patient with Alzheimer's, they take it with their medication, and when it hits the bottom of the stomach, it sends an email to your parents and says, your grandmother took her pill today, everything's okay. So you can imagine that in the future, you'll go to the doctor and they'll tell you, take 2 of these ingestible computers and they will email me in the morning. Another thing with these pills is that they can become used for security. So today we have to type in codes on our devices to be able to use them. But you could imagine that, there's this technology called RFID, and the way RFID works is it's a sensor that can speak to things. And so, and the way, I have NFC, this is called NFC in my phone, I can put it up to a payment system and I can pay my bill, right? So with RFID, it's the same kind of thing. So imagine that rather than I bring my phone because I want to make a payment or I want to unlock my car, you imagine I could take a pill, that is the sensor, that's an RFID sensor, and then if I want to pay for something at the store, I wave my hand, like a magician. Or if I walk up to my car, I just pull it and it knows it's me because I have that sensor in me. The other thing you could imagine is that rather than putting your security in your phone, that you pick it up and it knows because of that connection that's you. So that part is part of the past, present, and future. I wanted to show you a little video, which I always find to be fun, which is, let me pull this up here. It's a, this is a video that kind of shows how, you know, technology is pretty scary and it changes so rapidly, but we've been here before, and this is a good video to explain that.
Ansgar? Ja, ja, så bra. Ja, hei du. Hei du. Ja, hva gjelder det? Ja, det er den her. Ja, takk. Ja. Jaha. Ja, så den, jeg har ikke gjort noen ting helt formiddag, ja. Nei, jeg beklager at det tar tid, også skjønner du, holdt på å legge opp til et helt lyst til å se hva skal holde av helt på en gang. Ja, så det kommer ikke på ingen, eller? Nei, men ligger der. Har du forsøkt å åpne den? Åpne den, altså hvis det hadde vært så enkelt, så hadde jeg jo ikke tilkalt helpdesk, hadde jeg vel? Nei, du har altså bare en hånd? Nei, det skal bare fortsatt inn. Ja, du bare gjør der. Sånn, ja, da er vi i gang. Ja, så langt var det også. Ok. Ja, men så stoppet opp, og så var jeg redd for at noe av teksten skulle forsvinne, så jeg turte å gå videre. Ja, ok, nei, men du skjønner, inni her, så ligger det kanskje flere 100 sider med laget tekst. Så for å komme videre, så tar du tak i et ark, og så blar du over på neste side sånn, da fortsetter teksten der. Jeg blar, altså. Du blar, ja. Men jeg skal tilbake da. Ja, da bare blar du tilbake en tak der. Der, så er du tilbake til teksten også. Ok, så den slutter der, og så fortsetter den der. Ok, men når jeg skal avslutte dagen, hva gjør jeg da? Ja, bare slår du sammen permene. Ja? På den måten der. Sånn. Da ligger alt laget inni der. Altså, jeg risikerer ikke å miste noe av teksten her nå. Ja, alt ligger laget inni der. Ja, det virker litt på fyr på, eller ja, det er kanskje litt sannsynlig. Ja, ok. Nei, men for det er noe med, når du har holdt på med skriftruller, så tar det litt tid å konvertere til å bla i en bøk. Ja, ok, det er det. Ja, men før det går, du bare gå inn en gang til. Altså, jeg åpner sånn, og så, hva kaller du det? Blar. Jeg blar frem og tilbake, og når jeg er ferdig, så bare lukker jeg den. Flott, kjempefint. Ja, men ikke sant? Nå er det sånn igjen, nå får jeg ikke åpnet den. Så det er ikke likegyldig, det altså. Åpne fra den siden der, sånn. Der nå. Ja vel. Har du lest manualen, eller? Manualen? Vi skal følge med på manualen som utveiledning. Å ja!
So there you go. We've been here before. So one of the things that that we're going to start to see more and more of is in schools and students and so on with these technologies and how quickly they adapt and change. We've seen them so far where they've gone from laptops to iPads to smartphones, but students in classrooms and so on are going to change rapidly over the next few years, where you're going to have students that come into the classroom that are going to be wearing these wearable computers and have digital tattoos and so on. And the idea of teaching is going to change completely. You know, I think this applies to tourism. I think this applies to, you know, pretty much every industry. You can imagine that rather, you know, in your business, rather than people come in to your office and have your smartphone out, they're going to come in with wearable experiences on their face. They're going to come in with sensors on their body. There's going to be all these different things that will happen, and we have to be able to learn to adapt to those. So I just want to wrap up with a story. A lot of people wonder, you know, about technology and how quickly it can change and if they should be involved in it and so on. And I want to talk for a minute about Bitcoin. How many people know about Bitcoin in here? Just put your hand up. Okay, great. So Bitcoin is, for those of you who don't know, is a digital currency that was created with the concept of, there's two ideas. One is that currency should not be stuck within the government, that's a you know, broader idea. But the other concept really was about how on the internet, when you want to buy something, you can't. You can't buy, you know, if I wanted to buy something from, if I lived in America and I want to buy something in Spain, the currency doesn't translate. You know, I can't use my dollars in Spain, and in England they can't use their pounds in Japan, and so on. And so there needs to be some sort of system that is in place that allows these people that connect all over the world and all over the globe to be able to connect with each other on a financial level. The other problem is that when you want to send someone a very small amount of money, it costs more money to send it. So if I wanted to send someone 10 cents, right, it would cost me about $1 in fees to actually be able to send that. So Bitcoin, the way it works is that you can, first of all, it is not tied to a bank, so there's no fees that come in through that for the transaction fees. And second of all, it doesn't cost anything to send it to someone. It works in every country around the world, and so on. And whether the future is Bitcoin or it's something else, is yet to be decided, and it doesn't really matter as far as I'm concerned. The fact is that the future is that there will be some sort of currency that works on the web that works in the same way. So the reason I talk about this is because when Bitcoin first came out, it was just 4 years ago, and no one really knew what it was up until probably about a year ago. And there was a gentleman in Florida who was 32 years old, and his name was Laszlo. And Laszlo has a little baby daughter, about 2 years old. He's married, he lives in a very small house, and he plays on his computer on weekends. And one day he discovered this thing called Bitcoin, and he started mining for Bitcoin and collecting them, and at the time no one was really using them. And then he collected all these Bitcoin, and he was like, well, what am I going to do with them all? He had no idea what to do with them. So he went on the Bitcoin forum, right, and he said, I'm going to see if I can get somebody to get me a pizza with my Bitcoin, if I can use the Bitcoin to buy something. So he wrote on Bitcoin, on the forum, I'll pay someone 10,000 Bitcoin for a couple of pizzas. And no one responded. And then he posted it again, and a couple of days went by, and someone finally responded. And he said, which country do you live in? And the person who responded lived in England, and he said, okay, give me the phone number for your local pizza place, and I'll order you the pizza. So he orders the pizza, and Laszlo sends the guy 10,000 Bitcoin, which was worth at the time, based on the Bitcoin price range, $30. So up shows these two pizzas, and he eats them, and he's very proud of himself because he had convinced someone to take this virtual thing that didn't exist and buy him pizza. And his wife was impressed, and his daughter was very happy, and he took all pizzas. These are actually the pizzas that he ate. These are the actual pizzas. So, cut to a couple of years later, right, and Laszlo had stopped really doing anything with Bitcoin because he was doing other things. And it turned out those 10,000 Bitcoin were worth $12 million, right? So this was in just 2 years. And I wrote a story about Laszlo, and I called him, and I said, do you regret that you got rid of those 10,000 Bitcoin? And he said no, he kept a few, and he ended up getting a new computer and so on. But he did say to me that he had this realization that just how quickly technology can change, and just how quickly these things become what they do. In 2 years, these Bitcoin that he collected that no one even knew about, that had been worth $30, were then worth $12 million. And it was a perfect example of just how quickly these things change, and how important it is for us to stay on top of them. So that's my talk. Thank you.